wow, huh? Nico right there from 1972 with Lou Reed and John Cale in really stunning performance. Anybody who's seen video of this stuff, Nico also absolutely stunning. But yeah, that's of course the Velvet's classic Femme Fatale right here on WUSB Stony Brook. This week coming up this Sunday night over at Joe's Pub in Manhattan, and we're going to have some tickets to give away to this after we're done with the interview. We have Miss Tammy Faye Starlite with us on the line right now to talk about her Nico show. It's Tammy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Finn?
I am wonderful, and it's great to have you on the show. I've been a fan for a long time. I actually saw a version of this show quite about 2-3 years ago, and absolutely amazing then. And
oh, thank you.
Yeah, and so tell us, you know, a lot of people think, and I have to say that a lot of Velvet Underground fans, me being among them, didn't always know a lot about Nico, and I learned more from your show than I ever knew. And
aim to educate, you know.
That's right. It's all about the education, but amazingly entertaining show. What was the inspiration to do? Because you've done several other things before, in addition to your own bands, and you've done Tammy Faye Baker and a few other shows. And what brought you to Nico?
Well, Nico, I had done my Tammy Faye Starlite character, which I had done for a long time, which is being an Upper West Side Jewish girl. What else would I want to be but, you know, a right-wing conservative country singer who is filthy as well? That was Tammy Faye Starlite, and I did that for a long time, and with a lot of I don't know if success is the right word, but I would say hopefully some notoriety, because it was, you know, a little provocative. I had songs like, "If You're Coming Down, Sweet Jesus, Won't You Come All Over Me," that kind of stuff. And "Did I Shave My Vagina for This?" I hope you don't have to use the delay button at all.
No, we can use those words. There's certain other words we can't use, but that's fine.
Right. Then those are words that I love to use on stage, and there really isn't a show where I don't use certain words. Anyway, but that, you know, in a sense, at a certain point there, I thought, how many funny incest songs can you do? You know, so I thought, I don't know, I was just kind of in my head, and all of a sudden Nico came into my head, and I'm not quite sure why. She'd never really left. When I was 17, I first heard, I'd read the book Edie. That was the oral history of Edie Sedgwick, Andy Warhol's superstar of the 60s, who kind of had a very quick rise and decline. I guess you could say she was a predecessor of Paris Hilton, but with a lot more depth and intelligence. Not that I don't know Paris. She might be very smart. I don't know. But Edie Sedgwick seemed to have more going on. But the thing that fascinated me most in that book was when they would talk about the Velvet Underground, because that was so attached to Andy Warhol, and when Nico would talk, and then I went and I bought a cassette of the Velvet Underground and Nico, and I was fascinated by Nico's voice, because it was so deep, and it was so, you know, it was almost masculine, and yet there was this breathy kind of, you know, alluring femininity, and there was the German accent just added to everything that she did and made it more mysterious. And then I found another cassette, because that's how old I am. It was an ROIR,
sure,
those cassettes, and it was Nico live, and during that concert, she did Heroes, which she had recorded, and I remember listening to her singing, I wish I could swim like the dolphins can swim. And I thought, oh my God, that's, you know, the dolphins is like, I fell in love with her right there. And I bought her other records, and, you know, not that snippet of singing is representative of everything that I do, but, you know, it's just, you know, people say that she couldn't sing, and I really think that she had a fantastic, vocal ability, presence, power, and there was just something so, I guess arcane would be the word, or something so profoundly visceral about how she sang. It was almost like she sang from the depths of, the underworld, like ghosts rising. And her life was so interesting because of all the men that she slept with is already interesting, for everyone from Bob Dylan and Lou Reed and John Cale and Jimi Hendrix and Brian Jones and Jim Morrison was her big love, and the French actor Alain Delon, with whom she fathered a son, and Delon never recognized the son as his own. But and I don't know if she loved her son, but allegedly got him addicted to heroin, which I think, as an act, one could see that as a negative, but I see it as she just wanted to share something that she enjoyed with her son. So she has a lot of these qualities that are just a lot more interesting to me than, the traditional success stories. There's that word again, that, she was not as successful as, say, Joni Mitchell, but I feel that she is an equal songwriter, and I actually prefer her music to Joni, not to slight Joni Mitchell in any way or to single her out, but somebody who was writing their own songs. The way Nico wrote her songs, they were gothic, they were European, they sounded like nothing else. And, her life was not a string of glorious, triumphs. She had small triumphs, and then, with taking more and more heroin, I think that became the focus of her life, as I think it might. And she kind of willfully destroyed her own beauty, which I also find fascinating in this world of Botox and fillers and Restylane and Juvederm and things like that. She just let herself go completely and yet maintained that stunning beauty that she had in her face. And I don't know, there's something just so interesting. That's what fascinated me about her.
Yeah, and even as some of the, and I think she's a great singer myself. I've always been completely, sucked into it, and it's mesmerizing, is what it really is. And she's got a very, there's a lot akin to like Billie Holiday. Because her voice got maybe as she got older a little shakier and seemingly a little unsure, and as the heroin and the years of self-abuse went on, but it actually in many ways got more powerful.
I think so, because watching concerts that she did in the mid to the mid 80s, she was very powerful and very compelling, and there was always something in her voice that was secretive and that you could never know. She was almost unknowable, and that is also attractive. She wasn't one of these overly confessional people who are just in love with their own story. She really didn't divulge very much, and it's up to everybody else to kind of extrapolate what might have been going on in her mind. And she was also very funny, and I think that there was a part of her that knew that she was funny because she would say these non sequiturs and, or these, allegedly after she had broken up with Lou Reed and came to a Velvets rehearsal, according to legend, she just at one point just said, "I cannot make love to Jews anymore." And, I think that she knew the impact of these kind of statements, and I think thrived on them.
Yeah, and I can imagine that she delivered these in a very dry manner, and yet them actually probably being very hilariously funny.
Yeah, it's the interview that I initially based the first script on was an interview that she did in 1986 with an Australian DJ.
Right, I think that's the one I saw myself. Right. That you did.
And there's a lot in it that I couldn't put into the show because it wasn't really relevant to the story, but there is a part where the DJ talks about this Mo Tucker LP that he just listened to, and she said, she just says, but she's not a good singer. And the DJ's trying to like, no, she's all right. You know, I think she's good. She's like, no, she's not a good singer. You know, and it was just so casual, her dismissal, and it was just, you know, she kind of never really admitted defeat outwardly, but you could hear it inwardly. Like there's a concert I have of her it was live Max's Kansas City in 1980 with Cheetah Chrome.
Uh-huh.
Who was playing by her with her harmonium, which was her instrument, and with Cheetah. And at a certain point, she says, you know, my friend, I think it was might have been Lenny Lovitch or the other German singer who was around at the time.
Nina Hagen?
Yes. She says, my friend Nina is playing tonight, and I guess everybody went to her show because she's only doing one show, so I guess everybody went there. And then she just said, I am very aware of this. And it just seemed like she was so, like there weren't a lot of people at her show.
Right.
And that's another thing I can relate to. You know, and so if there aren't a lot of people, you know, having done the Nico show, you know, several times, and, you know, often to wonderful audiences, and all audiences are wonderful, but some are just more in quantity than others. And you just have to take it in as though this is the fact that you're performing for just a few people is part of the performance itself.
Right.
You know, it's almost like that's the piece. Like that's her life. And, you know, I've read books about her, my favorite being the book by James Young called The End. Mm-hmm. And he was her keyboard player in England. He was an English Oxford kid who also played piano, and he was kind of recruited to be in her band, and he wrote this incredibly funny and fascinating book. And in the film Nico Icon that came out about her in 1995, I think, yep, he's interviewed, and he says, I wanted to write about an aspect of rock and roll that's never been chronicled, which is failure. And there's something kind of beautiful and noble about something like that Nico kept, you know, she trudged on despite all the difficulties and all the, you know, money shortages and the need for heroin, but she did tour all around the world and in, you know, behind the Iron Curtain and in places where it was completely inappropriate for her to play. Not inappropriate, but, you know,
unlikely.
Unlikely for her to play. And she had some beautiful concerts, like in Reims Cathedral in France, and she played that June the 1st concert in 1974 with Brian Eno. It was apparently she slept with him too. John Cale and Kevin Ayers, and I'm guessing she slept with Kevin Ayers. I don't know. But,
I didn't know anybody slept with Brian Eno, but they.
Well, apparently, you know, everybody has their needs, and sometimes you have to have them met. And if you've got Nico there and she's willing and she's, you know, she's open, so to speak, then why not?
That's right.
You know, I also think, I have a feeling, and there's no corroboration to this, but my feeling is that she slept with Paul McCartney because she was, as it's documented, she did stay at his place in England right when the Beatles were making Sgt. Pepper, like in 1967. She never really had a home. She never really had any place to call home. She was I guess you would call it a couch surfer, but she would stay at other people's houses, and she would you know, crash at people's places. And she stayed with Paul McCartney at his place, and apparently he wanted to get rid of her because Jane Asher, his girlfriend at the time, mm-hmm, was away, and Linda Eastman was coming, and Nico was certainly not necessary for this, you know. He didn't want her there when Linda was there. But she did stay with him, and I would think that she was Nico, this incredibly beautiful model and chanteuse and girl of the moment, and he was Paul McCartney, the biggest rock star in the world, and why wouldn't they if she's staying there?
Exactly, and that's probably what did happen, yeah.
Yeah, what benefit? But the funny story is that she tells in a book that I have of hers by Richard Witz, it's the kind of straight biography of her, that he played her a day in the life. And she says that told him that it was really beautiful, except for when this stupid little pop song comes into it, which is obviously the McCartney part.
Right.
And so she said, "Oh, I guess I shouldn't have said that," but you know.
Meanwhile, she said it, which is her way.
Right, exactly, to Paul. And my guess is that she probably guessed that it was his part.
Well, you know, as I'm sure you do know, Brian Epstein wanted to manage the Velvets at one point. So
yeah, that would have been a different trajectory, I think.
Oh yeah, whole different trajectory. Tell us about now. Now we were just talking about Nico herself. What do you actually wind up incorporating? What's different? What's changed from the show? What's new in the show? And tell us about, you know, does it cover her life? Does it cover from
it
certain?
It does. It's initially I had based it on this interview that she did with the Melbourne DJ. I transcribed it and then altered it a little bit, adding things that I thought Nico would have said, taking out certain, extrapolating certain quotes from other sources of Nico's and inserting them in places that they weren't, but, just trying to make sense of it and just going through her life. And it was just this kind of nebulous interview that took place in '86, but and incorporating the songs chronologically. Although we did start with Femme Fatale, we would go to the Gordon Lightfoot song that she recorded with Andrew Oldham, I'm Not Saying.
Mm-hmm,
Jimmy Page played on and co-produced.
Mm-hmm. Another affair, supposedly, right?
Yeah, and Brian Jones also was part of that recording session. He recorded on the flip side of that this Andrew Oldham, Jimmy Page composition called The Last Mile that just Jimmy Page and Brian Jones play on. Brian Jones was another romance of hers. They were seen together in Monterey Pop, and so we kind of went through then the Velvet songs and then her songs from her album Chelsea Girl, which was all other people's songs. It was the first time anybody had recorded Jackson Browne. She did 3 Jackson Browne songs, some Lou Reed, some John Cale, a Tim Hardin song. And then she decided, through the influence of Jim Morrison and I think some peyote, she decided to compose her own songs. And that's when she kind of changed her look. And, she also had a big affair with Iggy Pop that's legendary because she apparently taught him how to do a certain thing that a woman might like. She taught him how to do that. She was his instructor. She was his Maggie May. So not that she was his first, but she
brought him to another level.
Exactly. And again, with the theme of education, because education is so important.
That's right.
So it went through basically the songs, and I focused more on the covers that she did rather than, we only did one of her own compositions, which was Frozen Warnings from the Marble Index. Because I thought that it would be more relatable, because people like the song Heroes. And she did an amazing cover of The End that John Cale, who was her main producer, reimagined as this kind of odd, almost jazz kind of dark, haunted house version of The End that's just so chilling and wonderful. So we tried to recreate that. And My Funny Valentine, which she covers, Nico sings Rodgers and Hart, would have been a great album of, classics if she'd gone the Broadway route, like Carrie Underwood. But, but so now the show is, we have a new director named David Schweitzer, who's a very well-known director especially of kind of more avant-garde theater. And he decided to take the interviewer off stage, have Nico be alone on stage. I mean, with the band, but who counts them? They're just musicians. And I love my band, by the way. They know that. They know that I mock them. You know, it emphasizes her aloneness. And now the voice, he's not Australian, he's not a DJ, it doesn't take place in any particular time. And he is coming over, it's sort of a voice of God kind of thing.
Okay, so it also doesn't distract from the main character of Nico. It's probably more centered.
Yeah, it's definitely focused on her, and she has to deal with, you know, how, you know, is this a conversation that's imagined in her mind, or is my personal backstory that's not really explicit, I hope, you know, maybe until the end it's a little more explicit, is that she is being evaluated to enter what I would call rock and roll Valhalla or something like that. And she's going through her life with this interviewer / inquisitor who's quizzing her on her life. And she does make her racial statements and her anti-Semitic statements that are just as lovable as ever. You know, we've changed the song. We've changed the order of the songs. We've changed the dialogue, and we've added "Janitor of Lunacy," which is one of my favorite of her compositions.
Yep, absolutely.
Which apparently was written for Brian Jones, and
oh, really?
Given the title and given his alleged proclivities of inserting guns in certain orifices of hers, but the title makes sense. Think of janitor, you think of plumbing, and lunacy, you know, he being the moon goddess, you know, and he being Brian Jones, it just all falls into a kind of, you know, cosmic, you know, settlement. I don't know what that means. But that's kind of how it's different. She's alone on stage. She's in a kind of musical limbo, and we don't know what will happen to her.
So now, when I first saw this, you were not playing harmonium. Are you playing one now, or is the band still just...
I am.
Oh, you are?
It's a one-handed harmonium, which helps me tremendously, because then I don't have to worry about two hands. But yeah, I do play Janitor of Lunacy on the harmonium. So it's, you know, the bellows are, it's almost like an accordion. You play the bellows with your hand. She had more of a pump organ, which you pump the air with your foot, and then she could play two-handed, but she was advanced.
Kind of like what
rudimentary.
Kind of like what Ginsberg played too a lot. The larger one.
Because it's very Hindu, very Indian.
Right.
And she loved that. And apparently Leonard Cohen, the one guy who was dying to sleep with her, who apparently she didn't, but he wrote songs for her, like "Take This Longing" and "Joan of Arc" were for her. She was sleeping with Jackson Browne at that point, who was 10 years younger than her, and you know, Jackson was so pretty that didn't really have time for Leonard, although she did love him, I think, and just as a person, as a songwriter.
I think Jackson was something like 16 when he met her, right?
Yeah, he was something, he could have been a little bit older, maybe 17. 18. Okay. She says he was 16, but he might have been somewhere around 18. But the fact that he wrote all those songs, you know, when he was 16, like these days.
Oh, yeah, these days, what a song that is.
Yeah.
And no matter who does that and what kind of, you know, it can be the flattest arrangement, it can be the most beautiful arrangement. It's always it always holds up as the song just rises above.
It does. It's gorgeous. You know, as is the Fairest of the Seasons, which we don't do, which I have done as Nico, but not in this one. But we do the Dylan, I'll Keep It With Mine, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's another gorgeous song that Dylan himself never really got right, as far as he's concerned, you know?
And it's funny, the first version I ever heard of that was Marianne Faithfull on Strange Weather, which is almost a totally different song. But I know that Judy Collins recorded it, I believe.
Which makes it an entirely different song right there.
Exactly. So, if I'm not erroneous in that thinking, but it's so simple and yet not simplistic at all. It's just it's also very it's hard to figure out as with many Dylan things.
Right.
But you kind of get the meaning just from the sound of the words and the sound of the melody rather than from the literal meaning of the words.
Exactly. So, Tammy Faye, the show is this week, right, at Joe's Pub?
It is this week, and it's fun, too, and it's fun, and, and I curse, and so, there's that, and the music is fun.
And, yeah.
And make it as upbeat as Nico can possibly be.
Do you have a full band for this, or what's the situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have electric guitar, acoustic guitar, bass, drums, piano, and sax, and the sax player also doubles as the beleaguered flute player during Chelsea Girl.
Didn't the flute drive Nico insane?
Over insane, and that is, you can hear it in the interview how much she hated it, and so I just kind of physicalized during the song because I have to attack him because it's just, and get that flute out of there because it's one of the most annoying things here.
And that's the genius of Tom Wilson, who was probably on the phone with his girlfriend at the time.
Exactly. That's what he was doing. He was talking on the phone. And I think they just overdubbed all these strings and this flute, and it just kind of gave it, it kind of dated the material to a degree, and yet now it's kind of codified, and it's kind of made it even more legendary because of the hatred of the flute adds to the tension of the song. So
that is true. That is true. But you know what it is if you only hear one song from Chelsea Girls, it's like it's kind of a Baroque touch. But if you listen to the album start to finish, it does wear on you after a while.
Oh, yeah. It's just it's nonstop. It's just it's really difficult to hear. It would be so beautiful if it was just the guitar, because a lot of the guitar is Jackson Browne. A lot of it is Lou Reed.
Right.
Sterling Morrison. Cale plays on it. So, you have these incredible musicians and legendary songwriters, and then you have this kind of syrupy, dare I say, schmaltzy kind of flute. Mm-hmm. And strings, which I'm never really fond of, other than in, like, George Jones, He Stopped Loving Her Today. I love the strings on that, but I'm not big on, I like Let It Be Naked.
Right. It's kind of reminiscent, actually, of Astral Weeks by Van Morrison, where they threw everything on there. That was
you don't need it with Van Morrison.
Exactly.
He's got plenty on it. Just his voice alone is enough.
Yep. All right, so the show is this Sunday night, right, at Joe's Pub?
Yes.
What time is the show?
The show is 9:30 p.m. Perfect for a Sunday night to get ready for your Monday morning.
That's right, or just call in sick on Monday, or, go in a little late.
Please
Absolutely.
Call in sick and blame me.
That's right. And you can blame me because I'll be there too. So
good. Okay, well, you'll be in a place of honor. And
That's
I'll
right.
give you part of the flute.
Well, thank you. So give us a call right now, 631-632-6901. If you would like to see Tammy Faye Starlite in her playing Nico with a full band, doing some versions of Nico songs, Velvet songs, other people's songs, give us a call right now. Joe's Pub this Sunday night. You can be sitting right next to me. It'll be very exciting. 631-632-6901. Give us a call right now. Tammy Faye, thank you.
Bless your heart. And if somebody does call in, I would be so thrilled.
No, they will. Oh. They're calling.
Okay.
631-632-6901. Tammy, absolutely, we're looking forward to the show, and we're going to be, supporting the whole thing. It's a great thing. We'll see you Sunday night.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.